Welcome to the GateWorld podcast.
Welcome everyone to episode number 158 of the GateWorld podcast. I'm Darren.
And I'm Adam.
And this is the show where two nerds talk about Stargate. Now, Adam, you know, we like to bring on a third nerd every now and again to talk Stargate, and today we have a very special guest coming up in just a couple of minutes. Brad Ellis is here from Wyvern Gaming. Wyvern, Stargate fans might know if you've been following along on GateWorld, is getting ready to publish the Stargate role-playing game. The first question I get when we post something about the Stargate role-playing game is, what platform can I play this on? Right? Is it on Xbox? Is it on PlayStation? Is it on Switch?
Yeah.
And it's a tabletop role-playing game, right? So get out your 20-sided die, get your D&D hat on. This is a tabletop role-playing game that's set in the Stargate universe. So I joked online recently, I guess the platform that it's on is your kitchen table.
Right. Yeah, I'll admit I nearly fell for the headline too at first. Just like, a Stargate RPG, is it finally happening? Like, you know, round 4, I think, of Stargate trying to get a video game out. But This is something completely different, and it's exciting because I think there was a previous RPG, a tabletop RPG a while back, but they're going all out for this one, and I'm excited because while it's not on a you know, digital platform or anything, this is a mechanism of gaming that a lot of people appreciate. There's a huge community behind you know, tabletop RPGs, and you know, Stargate fans are still around, hungry for something at this point. So if we can't get a TV show or a movie or anything off the ground, at least we have this to kind of, you know, help us get our fix.
It's always exciting to see the official licensees still rolling, right? Fandemonium is still publishing Stargate novels. Wyvern is getting ready to put out this RPG. Now, in order to set up proper context for folks to understand what's going on here in our conversation with Brad, we actually recorded this quite a while ago. We recorded it, I think, at the end of January. And then we haven't just been sitting on it. Wyvern's plans for their Kickstarter changed. And then we hit this whole pandemic thing, and things got scrambled around. They had said at one point during the shutdown that they were going to delay the launch of the game an entire year to Gen Con 2021. But then they decided, here's what's actually happening. They decided that they're going to do a sort of soft launch of the game this year. In fact, it's this week. It's coming up this weekend at Gen Con 2020. Gen Con, because of COVID-19, has gone entirely online. So this big, you'll hear Brad talk about it, this 60,000 person convention that normally meets every summer in Indianapolis is now going to be entirely online, and Wyvern is going to debut the game online. So we've posted at GateWorld a whole schedule of the events that are coming up this week, starting on Thursday, here at the end of July. And it's got, you know, they're going to live stream game events. Fans have already signed up to play. There's going to be, you know, Q&As, all sorts of events around this kind of soft launch of the game. And then they're going to do a Kickstarter a little bit later in the year, and they'll officially publish the core rulebook in 2021.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how things are kind of shuffling around because of the coronavirus. You know, because when March and April came around, it was just complete chaos on a global scale. But now certain endeavors or conventions are finding a way to do it, you know, to digitize it or to put it online or to do things remotely. You know, the whole world is kind of having to adjust to these current circumstances. So it's great to see, you know, Comic-Con's doing a lot of Comic-Con at home stuff. They've been doing a lot of video streaming or panels or pre-recorded stuff, and then it seems like they're kind of going to do the same with Gen Con, which is allowing the Stargate RPG to move forward without a major delay, like you were saying.
Yeah, Comic-Con at Home was this past weekend, and they did kind of an early preview of the Stargate RPG there, and they got David Hewlett, Rodney McKay, to sit down and play the game on a live stream, which is amazing. If they have that available to watch later, we'll definitely post it up on GateWorld so people can watch David playing the game. So let's get into our chat with Brad.
The main discussion.
Joining us now, straight from Wyvern Gaming in, if I got this right, Memphis, Tennessee, is CEO Brad Ellis. Brad, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
Well, we're super excited to have you on the podcast to talk about your love of Stargate and, of course, to talk about the Stargate role-playing game that you guys have in development for later this year in 2020. Could you tell us first just sort of about how you discovered Stargate, how you became a fan of the show?
Sure. I think it was just like everybody when it's originally aired. I was enamored by the franchise as a whole, and going back and doing rewatches, it really is a show that holds up, and it's worthy of the star uh, moniker, if you will, in the same vein as the Star Wars and Star Trek, right? So, but I feel like it's kind of somewhere in between because it's kind of got the Star Trek, going on adventures and missions kind of feel, but it's got the grittiness of Star Wars. So it really scratches an itch. It's right in the middle, and I feel like it's a wonderful series. I unfortunately missed all the follow-up series of when they originally aired due to life events, I guess.
Sure.
But
I've had one of those.
but obviously, yeah. But obviously, since we've gotten the license for the company and started in development of the project, we've done a complete rewatch multiple times of all the series, and it's man, I can't say enough how much we love the show.
We were very interested to hear that the game, which we'll talk about in a minute, is going to start around the middle of season 6 of Stargate SG-1. So that got me thinking, of course, about that era of SG-1, what was going on in the lore, right, in the struggle against Anubis, etc. We'll talk about the setting of the game in a minute, but do you have a favorite episode or season of the show? Was it just that moment in Stargate's lore worked for the game, or is there's something about season 6 in particular that kind of grabs you as a fan?
Yeah, I would say personally, my favorite episodes are the two-part Tok'ra episodes. I just feel like that those it really expanded the lore about the whole Tok'ra and what they're like and what's like the good symbiotes are like, and bringing in Sam's dad and those events. And besides that one, the other one that I really enjoy is the Fragile Balance. I just love young Jack.
Oh, yeah.
That actor it was just captured Richard D. Anderson's character so well.
It's been so long since Fragile Balance. That was in the early part of season 7, and still to this day, I constantly see fans say, hey, how about like an SG-1 The Next Generation, and we get Michael Welch to come back and play a younger Jack O'Neill who's now an adult.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, for sure. But the reason for where we landed with the RPG was what was happening in the canon at that time. It really fit what we wanted to do with the RPG, and it was far enough into the series where there's lots of backstory that can be pulled upon, and it's really the point in which Anubis is coming to power, right? And there's a new threat that's brewing, and it's really the point where you start to see the different factions start to work together, and that plays in very heavily into our RPG and how we have the various races working together in the Phoenix site.
So before we jump more into the game, I just have a question about, Wyvern Gaming and your history with it, like where the company came from and what's its mission, like what kind of content is creating and how, Stargate fit into your company's goal and brand.
Sure. So our motto or kind of mission statement, if you will, is approachable games for everyone. And one of the things that me and my co-founders, we really wanted to make sure that our games brought was that it was games that you could sit down and start playing like within 15 minutes. We do like the really big box games, the crunchy ones that take a while to set up for the right situation, but we feel like that being able to sit down and start playing a game and teach the game almost as you're playing in a lot of cases, that is the kind of game that we wanted to develop and bring to market. Some of our past games a lot of them are cooperative in nature. We have a Cthulhu deck building game, for example. It's a 1 to 6 player cooperative where you're fighting against the Cthulhu mythos, and you're basically, to learn the game, you basically play the game. It's that simple. You just go through the phases of the game, and the cards themselves will teach you how to play the game as you're playing it. So it's those types of mechanics that we really liked. So when we started to go into the RPG and the Stargate, we were looking at the different types of systems out there, gaming systems for RPGs, and the one that seemed to be the most prevalent right now is 5th edition, and that's why we chose 5th edition, because it kind of struck a balance between the crunchiness, for the power players who like a lot of options and things like that, to being easily accessible for the new players. So that's why we chose 5th edition, and we went with the open gaming license for that. What allows us to expand on that.
For sure. So for people like myself, who I'd like to consider myself a geek in some ways, but I'm definitely, my area of expertise is not tabletop RPGs, and I'm sure there are other Stargate fans out there like me. Can you just briefly explain what the 5th edition open gaming license is and what kind of mechanism that sets up for gameplay?
Sure. So Wizards of the Coast, who is kind of they're one of the big boys in Dungeons and Dragons, right there. They're kind of they invented the thing, so to speak. They're on currently their working edition is 5th edition. So they've, through the years, it's come up. You had your first edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 3rd edition, 4th edition, and now we're on 5th edition. And one of the cool things they did with 5th edition is they took the core mechanics of the game itself, like how sneaking works, or how combat works, or how attributes are used for skills and things like that. Those are mechanics that they bundled up into a package that they call the Open Gaming License, and it basically opened it up so that other game designers like ourselves could take that as a toolbox and use it to build on top of. So essentially, all of the basic mechanics that are available for the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, we are able to build on top of. So we've changed the things that make sense. Like in Dungeons and Dragons, there's magic, right? Because it's a fantasy setting. Where in Stargate, there's not magic. So, we take all the magic out, we've replaced it with, technology. And doing things like that allow you to expand on it and make it your own, so to speak. But it really jump starts the project as a whole, and it also gives the familiarity to the players who've played Dungeons and Dragons in the past.
I think it's brilliant. It's because you've got people who are been playing tabletop gaming for years are going to be familiar with the system, right? With the mechanics and how everything works. I've been around the block a few times. Even I played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. But you've got to make this accessible also to the Stargate audience. Otherwise, you just have like the subset of tabletop gamers who also love Stargate. It seems like one of the big challenges here for bringing this product to market is getting people who are new to gaming, who are new to tabletop gaming, but love Stargate, and they see this thing and it looks so cool, and they want to make a character and level up and participate in the ongoing stories. So this just makes the game, it seems to me, really accessible, that you can just kind of learn it on the fly.
Absolutely, and Dungeons and Dragons in 5th edition and all this RPGs in general is a cooperative kind of game, right? You're working together as a group, so it helps for people who are a little intimidated to learn all the rules. They can kind of learn as they go, because your fellow players will be more than happy to teach you, and they'll if you're trying to convince the convince the Tok'ra that you're actually on their side, you can make a diplomacy check, and the DM will actually say, okay, we'll roll a d20 and add your diplomacy modifier, right? And it's very simple. You just look at your sheet and go, oh, diplomacy, here it is. I roll it. Here's what I got, and
Yeah.
the GM will just tell you if you succeed or not. So it's very helpful in learning the game, that you have someone there who's basically coaching you, as that's how the game is played.
Now, when we play D&D, we have spell casting and all this other kind of stuff. I'm really fascinated by the mechanics of replacing magic in this world, of course, with technology. Can you think of a example off the top of your head of how that works with technology kind of stepping in to do something that in the 5th edition rules maybe magic would do in the D&D world?
Well, sure. I mean, so Fireball, right? Everybody, when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you like to play the wizard who has Fireball. Well, in Stargate, you don't have Fireball, but you do have C4.
Hey, there you go.
So, yeah, things like that. And then we replace some of the skills. For example, instead of Arcana, which is, pretty typical or D&D skill, you would have you have science and you have engineering are skills that you have. So you might, if you need to figure out how to repair the DHD, for example, you might roll an engineering check to do your repairs. Or if you need to figure out this germ that is infecting the local town, you might roll a science check to try to figure out how that manifests or things like that. So those are just some simple examples.
It sounds so cool, and it sounds really flexible for the game to continue to grow and evolve, just as the 5th edition gaming license has evolved and sort of created new possibilities for gaming and for storytelling. We're talking about magic and D&D. I'm just thinking, if we get a few more seasons beyond season 6 in SG1, SG1's got dragons. SG1, right? There's dragons in the quest in season 10, and in seasons 9 and 10, there's this whole expansion of Stargate's lore into Arthurian legend and Merlin, and this deep exploration of Merlin as an ancient, who is now using his advanced knowledge and his technology to simulate magic, like the holographic dragon.
Absolutely, and that's one of the great things about Stargate and using it as a RPG is that basically on the other side of that gate you can put anything, right? If you want to have a medieval setting this time, go for it. If you want to have a sci-fi adventure next time, you can do that too.
So what is the development process like for the game? Just as like a fan of storytelling and interactive gaming, can you just take us inside, from when the moment you realized you were going to make a Stargate RPG, how you kind of build the world, build a mythology, build the gameplay, building it off of a 5th edition open gaming license, but also making something that's probably going to capture the feel of Stargate and the feel of going off world, and how you write that story and turn it into a finished product?
Sure. So, fortunately, there is a ton of material that's already there, right? So it was extremely important to us to build off of the canon that currently exists, and that's been a must from the start. When we started talking with MGM, we said that we want this to be part of canon. We want it to fit in the universe and be part of the overall story. So building on top of that has been really fun. We've got some really great writers that we brought on, and they have basically brought, imagined what are the underlords under the system lords. What are other system lords that are out there that maybe Anubis took down. What's going on other planets at the time of the events of things we see in SG1, things like that we built on top of in the development process. There's going to be a really large portion of the book dedicated to basically recapping from season 1 through 6, with the addition of things that we've learned from the perspective of the Stargate Phoenix site, which we can talk about when you're ready.
So the game was announced last year, and we knew at some point in 2020 we were going to see a Kickstarter. How does Kickstarter figure into the process of you guys getting this game to market this summer?
Sure. So the Kickstarter is very, very important to our development of the project. The primary reason that we're doing the Kickstarter is so that we can get the fans' involvement early on, so that we can take the feedback and integrate it into the game itself. So we're wanting to make sure that the true fans who really are excited about the project get an early edition of the book, the core rulebook, and be able to play it, kick the tires, and provide us with what it is that they like, dislike, where we might have gotten something wrong, even, and correct it before we get a finished product in the end.
Okay.
Which is, yeah.
So the Kickstarter is connected to a sort of version 1.0 or version 0.5. Is this sort of connected to like the open playtesting, the public playtesting that you said is coming up?
Yeah. So we will be having a public playtest of the core rulebook launching very soon, and it will continue through the Kickstarter experience while we're finishing up the core rulebook as it or finalizing it towards the end.
Cool. And how has the private playtesting been going? You've been posting some pictures online of some of these events you got guys together to play the game as it stands right now. How's that process been going for you?
It's been going great. The group that we have that's doing the private playtests have been wonderful. We've got about 60 gate masters, and that's what we're calling them, by the way, GMs, gate masters. We've got about 60 individuals who are running for their local game groups and providing feedback on a weekly basis for everything from the different encounters to types to how the weapons are working and how how fast they're defeating the enemies, and how diplomacy type encounters are working, and different mechanics that are new to our version of 5th edition that are being tested along the way. So it's going really well, I would say, and we're at the point where we're ready to open it up to more people. So we'll be looking forward to that very soon.
So these guys are spread out all over the country, or maybe even all over the world, right? But then
yeah, all over the world.
You've also been having sort of live events at conventions and stuff. I know you started playtesting at Gen Con last summer. What's it like to actually be in the room yourself and to watch other people kind of step into this world and make a go of the game?
Yeah, it's so great because you sit down at the table. It's really been interesting, especially in the public venues where you have people who sign up, and a lot of people, the people that sit down at the table, they're either sitting down because they are avid Stargate fans, or they are avid 5th edition fans, and seeing the mix of those individuals work together, it's actually been really interesting because you have the 5th edition people who are helping the Stargate people with the mechanics, and you have the Stargate people helping the D&D people with the lore and mythology. So it's
that
actually
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's been going really well, and last Gen Con when we ran probably about, I think, about 80 events in total, and we did a survey of the individuals at the end of each of those sessions, and our average on a scale from 1 to 10, where people were liking it, it was right around an 8 on the scale, which is really good for a year early version of the game.
So knowing that this game is for, both gamers and Stargate fans alike who've maybe never played a game like this, what kind of feeling do you want players to come away from the game feeling? Like, what do you want to capture in the game? And once players, complete a round or an episode of the game, what is what is that process supposed to be like from a fan's perspective?
Sure. We want them to feel like they just played in an episode of Stargate, essentially. In the Gate Master chapter that we have written in the core rulebook that's in process is writing it to teach the Gate Master to start or create the game so that it plays like an episode of a show over a series, basically a season. So the story beats that you might see in an episode are things that we're teaching the Gate Master to put in the game itself, and a season arc where you have a story that happens over several episodes. We're teaching the Gate Masters in the book itself, how to mechanically put that together so that you have a flow of a story from one to the end. So what we're trying to really do is make you feel like you're actually part of a Stargate series that could be played on TV, that you might be watching in the comfort of your home.
I also read somewhere that players will be able to kind of track their progress and through like an online portal or an online platform. Can you talk a little bit about your plans for that, for how all the playtime can build a profile or build a character, and you can customize a character or kind of track that progress throughout several different games?
Sure. So basically there'll be two ways to play the game, if you will. There'll be kind of the homebrew version where you would have, someone who is the Gate Master who is sitting down with his friends at his home weekend after weekend, and they're playing on that table every week, same players going from session to session, right? So that's more of the homebrew type of play. The other type of play is organized play, or sometimes called a living campaign. We're actually calling it a living series. And in that play, you basically we're going to be publishing stories, official stories from Wyvern Gaming, that will have an overall season arc over hopefully multiple seasons, and that storyline will be told by, could be a different GM to you every session. So you're able to play in episode 1 with maybe a GM that you went to a convention and had played, and then you would able to save what happened for your character into our online database, basically. And then if you go to another convention a couple of months later, or the next week or whatever, you can play that exact same character with this other GM in the new story. So in this fashion, you're able to level your character over time with at the pace in which you're comfortable going, basically. So in this way, you don't necessarily have to have a group of friends every week to show up at, because that's a lot of problem that people have playing D&D, is the time commitment that it takes to go week after week. Where in a living campaign, basically, as you have time and you have a local convention or something like that you can go to, or even we're going to make it where the organized play can be played at home as well. So you can, if you have a GM that at your local game shop, you can actually do that and be ran there as well. So that's what the online database is for, is so that it makes sure that you as a registered character, you're getting credit for playing the different episodes, and that you're getting the proper rewards. And if a GM needs to check your progress to make sure that why do you have this really powerful item, it can go back and look at the database and say, oh, they did X, Y, and Z on that episode, which is a legitimate thing. That's kind of how that works.
So the Gate Masters have the ability to kind of check in on your profile, or some kind of public access.
That's right. Yep.
This makes me wonder, in the tabletop community, is there much use of online play? I mean, do like groups of friends get together on Skype or something? And I can foresee some of the problems of that, right? If you're like you're rolling a die that nobody else can see.
Absolutely.
Like, there's potential risk for cheating. Like, no, I didn't roll a 4. I rolled a 14.
Absolutely. Yeah, the online role play community has really boomed. Actually, there's things out there called like Roll20, Fantasy Ground, that make it where you basically you can load up your characters in their interface. You have a character sheet. You have dice that you roll, and they virtually roll on the screen so everybody sees it. And the GMs can actually put together maps and things like that your character can go through the area. It's actually a very very good systems that are out there, and we may or may not be also in development with some of those guys to have an online version of the Stargate role playing game. So
Okay, cool. You may or may not be.
may or may not be.
Intriguing. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's cool. It sounds like, yeah, instead of just like Skype, where you might need to hook up like extra over-the-shoulder cameras for, keeping people honest, there's actually like a common platform that somebody can log into.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to
cool.
roll20.com is probably one of the more popular ones.
So if we can dig into the lore a bit now, I think I'm guessing probably that, like me, you're really into the lore of Stargate and the world building that has happened over the course of 17 seasons of 3 shows. You mentioned the Tok'ra in season 2. Here we're kind of starting off the role playing game in season 6. The episode that you've talked about as being particularly important is Allegiance, which is when the Tauri and the Tok'ra and the Free Jaffa have all gotten together and are kind of occupying the same space at Earth's Alpha Site. And so, right, if folks remember back to when season 6 was on the air, that was a really remarkable thing when that episode aired, because we'd had so many episodes where this one's about the Tok'ra and Jacob Carter shows up or Martouf shows up. And then the next week, well, this one's about the Free Jaffa and, Rachnor shows up or Braytak shows up. This was actually, right, it took 6 seasons before we ever saw Jacob Carter and Braytak on the screen at the same time. We had those 2 worlds come together, and it built the world out. It created new possibilities, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we chose that particular point in the series to start our campaign, if you will. The backstory that we're putting forth is that particular episode and that event where the Alpha Site was essentially compromised because there was an infiltration, right? And they were all blaming each other for doing it, but they learned in the end it was not. It was
it was the Ashrak.
Yeah, the Ashrak. Thank you. It was the Ashrak that actually infiltrated. So what we're putting forth is that after the events of that, they had to build a new Alpha Site, or they had to move the Alpha Site. But what the Stargate Command and the President basically decided was, well, we also have all these the Tok'ra and the Free Jaffa and other people, other humans from other worlds that are wanting to help in the fight against the Goa'uld, right? So what they decided to do was, in addition to moving the Alpha Site, they created a new site called Phoenix Site. And its purpose is very similar to Stargate Command, is that they train up the freedom fighters from all over the galaxy to work as teams, to go on missions, to find new technologies, to discover new things, and to find the things that can help them against the fight with the Goa'uld, and eventually, free as many of the people in the galaxy as possible. So in this way, we have a lot of as a playable race in our game. You can play a Tok'ra, you can play a Jaffa, you can play an Unas, which is
nice.
Really exciting.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
You can play as a human from a different world, maybe someone from Abydos, or one of the other many humanoid planets that we discovered that the seeds were placed throughout the galaxy. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think one of the great things about SG-1 or about Stargate, like any great sci-fi franchise, is how multi-layered a show can be, because it takes place in the real world. There's Earth dynamics, there's military dynamics, there's modern science dynamics, there's adventure, exploration, sci-fi dynamics, but it also sounds like, this RPG is really zeroing in on the social and the cultural dynamics of a lot of the different races we meet and how they interact. On top of having the adventure, it seems like the Phoenix site is just going to create a really interesting setting to explore a lot of that throughout the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, one of the really cool things that we also created, this may or may not be the first time I'm saying it, is right outside of the actual site that is the Phoenix site, is a town called Haven. And it's really a melting pot where a lot of the refugees from worlds that had to be evacuated were put. So it's a place where things can happen. It's where adventures can start. It's you can have a lot of the conflicts or the things that happen between, what happens when you get a group of Jaffa and a group of Tok'ra in the same place, or So we're really excited about what the stories that'll come out of Haven will be, because we think that is a really fun melting pot of things that can come about.
So Phoenix Site is on a populated world. This is really interesting. It makes a lot of sense because, of course, the show is established over the course of many, many seasons that there are multiple bases, not just the Alpha Site. We also, at some point, we see a Gamma Site. We see Free Jaffa hanging out. What's the episode? I think it was in Covenant in season 7. I think we saw the Gamma Site with Free Jaffa just kind of hanging out there. So
yeah,
you can set up a base here. That's totally consistent with the way that Stargate Command operates, and be kind of isolated enough, I suppose, if you're trying to maintain continuity with the show's lore. You're isolated just enough that when, like, Earth is under a major crisis, like Anubis is attacking at the end of season 7 in Lost City, Stargate Command is shut down. You don't have to write episodes that necessarily deal with that because you're on another base that's on another world, and you don't have to have Jack O'Neill or General Hammond show up every single episode.
Absolutely, yes. And that's one of the really cool things is because we wanted to have these other playable races as part of the game. There was a previous Stargate role-playing game.
Yeah, I never played it, but
you basically could just play a human. That's all you could play.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to make it where you could play, one of these different races. And then the storyline of creating the Phoenix site just made that work perfectly. Because otherwise, it would feel funny if you were playing another Jaffa that was at Stargate Command. That would not feel right to us, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create another base. And it makes sense that they would have a place where you would have other Jaffa or Tok'ra or what have you that are wanting to join the fight, and this is where they get trained up and work with the team.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Now, we've heard you elsewhere talk about the new race that you got to create, but can you share who that race is with our listeners?
Oh, yeah. So this was really fun. So when we were pitching some things to MGM, one of the playable races that we were talking about was the Nox.
Of course. Everybody wants to be a Nox, right?
Yeah,
you can turn things invisible. You can bring your friends back from the dead. Everybody wants to be a Nox.
Absolutely. And they said no, they're way too powerful. We can't do that.
All right.
But they said, but if you want, you can create a new race.
Ooh, can I be a replicator?
Sure, I guess.
That may be in version 2.
Yeah, maybe later. Maybe expansion or something. So they said you can create a new race, and we were like, well, great. Well, we want some of the aspects of what the Nox are. We kind of wanted someone who was kind of nature driven. those types of aspects that we really liked about the Nox. So what we came up with was a race called the Aturan, and there's a whole backstory that's going to be completely detailed in the book. But the essence is that the Aturans were once a warring race that were basically destroying their planet and destroying each other, and eventually the Nox stepped in, or after they were asked they were basically were convinced to help them, mostly because they were destroying their planet, right? And they nurtured the Aturan over many hundreds of years to basically teach them how to be more peaceful. Some of their technology, of course, they didn't want to give them a bunch of stuff, but just enough to help them along, and being able to just be a nature-loving type of race. So that particular race is they also ventured out from their world of Atura and joined the Phoenix site, and so that's one of the playable races that you can be. And how they have not been discovered and why they are now part of the Phoenix site will be covered in the game.
Yeah, why we haven't met these guys after so many years of gate travel.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually precedence for this, Brad. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but one of the previous Stargate video games, I don't think it was Stargate Worlds, which never released, but I think it was Stargate SG-1 The Alliance, which was an earlier video game project that was also never released. Part of the lore that they were building was that the alliance of the four great races that we learn about in the fifth race, the Asgard, the Nox, the Furlings, and the Ancients. Each of those four races at one point in their history had sort of adopted a younger race and took on this role of kind of shepherding that younger race. And so there was this really interesting dynamic in the lore that was proposed for that game of, one of those races was the Gould, and maybe that's how they became as powerful as they were. And, the Nox were also kind of caretakers for someone else. So it fits at least with other ideas that folks have had for gaming in the Stargate universe.
Yeah, actually, that was brought to our attention when we were doing the original proposal for saying we wanted to use the Nox. That was actually pitched to us as well, and that's actually probably where that idea came from. I'll be honest.
Cool.
So ultimately, we're going to get the Stargate RPG sometime in the summer. But apart just from the launch and kind of like the beta testing we were talking about with the Kickstarter, what is your hope for this game? And is there a strategy for expansion, where it could go if it's well received, how it could build? You just through like the online dynamic you were talking about, and ultimately, what are your greatest hopes for this project as it's moving toward its release date?
Sure. So, really exciting. We have really big plans if things go as we all hope they do. And the living campaign, or the living series, that will be published, will, like I said, we'll start around season 6, episode 9 of the SG-1 show, and we'll cover basically a season in real time, so to speak, of the SG-1 series, where we will continue down the path of the events that also are happening in Stargate, and you can imagine what the things that might be coming next might be in the form of expansions and books like that. We could very well get to Atlantis. We could very well, if things go well, we will continue to publish additional material as long as you guys are loving it and lapping it up. So, which I'm pretty sure that we will, because I'm excited to keep on for sure.
That's really exciting to know kind of, okay, I can watch the season 6 episodes while my friends and I are playing the game, and then we know that, sometime a year or two, however long it takes, there's going to be maybe a season 7 expansion pack, and we can kind of anticipate some of the major story beats. Is there a deliberate effort then to potentially tie in the future episodes and future seasons with the events of the show? Or does Phoenix and its story become kind of, isolated? We're not necessarily going to have Loki or other characters that show up in season 7.
Yeah, the idea that it will parallel what's happening in SG1, and you may see some of the effects of things that are happening in the show. In fact, you may even be part of helping SG1 or the Stargate Command in ways that are off screen, right? Like how was it that Tritonin got finally developed? Things like that, that could be something, some storyline that we can build on top of as the seasons go. But that's the idea, is that we would continue down the road of the living campaign or the living series to get to the point where we're paralleling the show.
Very cool. Well, I guess what I really want to know at the end of the day, I got my 20-sided die here ready to go. When can I play this game? How long is it going to take for somebody to teach me how to play this game and get Adam here at the other end of the business end of my staff weapon?
Yeah. Well, the game itself is, we're going to release it at Gen Con 2020, which is this coming August. We're also launching the Living series at that same time, so it's going to be a big event for us. So if you've never been to Gen Con, it's the best 4 days in gaming. That's their that's their tagline, so to speak. And it's 60,000 of your closest friends playing games all over the place.
That is huge. I had no idea Gen Con was that big.
Yeah, and that's just over the course of the 4 days. It's the turnstile is much higher than that, but unique visitors, I think, is around 60,000, if not more, if I'm not mistaken. But
that's crazy.
So,
yeah, no wonder you guys did 80 different events last year.
yeah, it probably sounded like a lot when I said it, but so we're going to be launching it there. The physical book will be available there for purchase, and the Living series will be launched at that event. So we'll be when event registration opens up, I believe in June, if I'm not mistaken. So if you just go to gencon.com, you can see the information there. Or if you prefer, and I would recommend, if you go to stargatetherepg.com, which is the main portal for the game, you can sign up there, and we'll be publishing news and information as we make it available, as things happen. So that's where you can learn about it. And then, of course, when we have our Kickstarter, if you wanted to be in on the ground floor, you can back that campaign and be one of the first to roll the dice that way.
Cool. And if I don't get to make it to Gen Con, am I going to be able to buy this online at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be the point of the retail launch, so to speak. So it'll be available in all your normal outlets.
Cool. Well, we'll send everybody to stargatetherepg.com. Did I get that right?
Yep, you did.
And we'll continue, of course, to tell people about the game as we move through this big launch year over at GateWorld.net. Brad, thanks so much for being on the show and telling us about what you're working on. We're super excited.
Yeah, I'm super glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, a huge thanks to Brad for spending some time giving us really a deep dive into the game. It was such a fascinating conversation. If you have some experience with D&D, like I played D&D a little bit as a kid, or if you're brand new to the world of tabletop gaming, hopefully they've made this to be really accessible and approachable for Stargate fans who want to give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really exciting to hear, people, developers, creative developers like Brad get really excited talking about Stargate and, tapping into a mythology and legacy that, came out like 15, 20 years ago in many ways, but is still kind of picking up steam in different outlets. We had comic books, a lot of SGU and Atlantis comics come out kind of recently, and now we have this. So, Stargate is still cranking.
Yeah, and you can tell that Brad and his team are Stargate fans. This is really a labor of love for them, and they're going deep into the show's mythology.
Absolutely.
So once again, you can check out the game's premiere at Gen Con Online this weekend. The convention takes place from July 30th through August 2nd, 2020. They're going to have live streaming gameplay broadcasts. Again, they're going to have not just the David Hewletts of the world, but in this case, they're going to have fans who have signed up to play the game online. There's going to be Q&As, all kinds of things for people who are interested in the game to finally get their hands on it in this kind of soft launch format. We're going to keep our eyes on what's going on here at Gen Con, and then over at GateWorld.net, we'll let you know when the Kickstarter launches if you want to support and get your hands on the publication of the core rulebook next year. In the meantime, Adam, it was good to talk to you again. Let's do this more often.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's catch up. And hopefully, we found out pretty recently that Brad Wright is still behind the scenes trying to make a new Stargate show or Stargate something, some form of narrative entertainment happen.
Yeah.
I'm tepid because of past results, but I'm still, in a greater sense, optimistic moving forward that we'll have a bit more to talk about soon.
Well, that's where we're at. We try and be optimistic that something's going to happen, but also realistic about the sort of ins and outs of the production business and what it takes to actually get something off the ground. For our full coverage of what's going on right now in the Stargate franchise, head over to GateWorld.net. Of course, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel, get cool videos that Adam and I are making. You can find this podcast there on YouTube if you want to watch it there, or listen to us on iTunes, on Spotify, on Google. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you should be able to find the GateWorld podcast. And then also, if you're interested in some of the interviews that we're doing, just recently published an interview with director Martin Wood. Go to your podcast feed and search for GateWorld Interviews. There's a separate podcast that you can subscribe to there. So thanks everybody for listening. I'm Darren.
And I'm Adam.
And we'll see you next time on the GateWorld podcast.